This week on Your Father's Trekcast, well, we talk about the daddy of all daddies, Jean-Luc Picard, and how he's going to deal with his son. We go through the latest episode of Picard, Season 3, Episode 4, and we'll even talk about some companion pieces to watch and much, much more. Don't go away. We will be right back. Podcasting. That ancient ritual of middle-aged men seeking validation in the internet age. What you're listening to now is a new Trekcast by two longtime fans who have tons to say about Star Trek and the world around it. We will inform, we will entertain, because we are Your Father's Trekcast. Starring Will as the Old Man Gamer and JP as, well, JP. Talking about new episodes of Star Trek, old episodes of Star Trek comic books, Star Trek video games, Star Trek the Flamethrower, anything else they feel like, because hey, it's their cast. So sit back, relax, have a beverage of choice. Unless you're driving, for God's sake, pay attention to the road. Here are Will and JP talking Trek. Yeah, I'm going to work that in. I'm going to have to recut that because I got to add Star Trek the Flamethrower. I'm sorry. I love that part of Spaceballs.
Absolutely.
Star Trek the Flamethrower. The kids love this one. So, all right. We have got a lot to do. We probably should get and open our hailing frequencies.
Mr. Worf, open hailing frequency.
All right, before we get going tonight, we want to remind you that we are a part of the Geek to Geek Media Network. This is a network of geeky podcasts and other content dedicated to promoting positivity and inclusion, as well as just showcasing some really awesome stuff. They have a ton, and when I say a ton, I mean it's a metric ton, of awesome things to check out. Articles on gaming, articles on gaming, and there's gaming articles, and don't forget those articles on gaming. No, but there's also some really great podcasts, like I said, videocasts, things of that nature. You can find out more. Just go to geektogeekmedia.com. That's GEEKTO media.com. Don't go to geek the number 2 geek media, because that's actually like a geek dating site, and no.
Well, I mean, unless you need that kind of thing.
Yeah, you might need that thing, but you probably don't. So, yeah, but go to geektogeekmedia.com. We'd love to see you there. But we have got an interesting show tonight. I have nothing to open, so I'm drinking Coke Zero. But JP, my friend, how the hell are you tonight?
I'm a little bit sore. So if those people watching the video stream notice me kind of fidgeting around a little bit, my upper back has been really sore. The last few days, we've got yet more snow here in South Dakota.
Well, that means I'm going to get it. Thanks.
You're welcome. Anytime. Got to share the wealth.
Yeah, it feels awesome.
But, yeah, so it's welcome to winter.
Welcome to winter, yeah. It's funny you mentioned that. I've been dealing for the last couple of weeks with a, I thought it was just like a tendon in my bicep because it was a real pain there. Went to the doctor this week, and he's like, okay, lift your arm up. It's like, nope, that's your rotator cuff. So I'm going to try really hard to just really nurse this. I don't want to go and see a doctor. Doctors, I don't like doctors. Nobody likes doctors. Who wants to see doctors? But, yeah, I guess and I'm at the age, I'm almost 50. I'm 49. I get it. I'm not happy about it, but I understand why it happens. So, yeah, it's just kind of where I'm at.
That's why we're Your Father's Trekcast.
Yeah, well,
we are men of a certain age.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, work is just incredibly busy. I was very lucky to even get to see the episode today. So, I mean, it's kind of fantastic. And let's kind of break into what we're going to talk about tonight, because I think this is going to be another pretty decent conversation. For Energize, our main topic tonight is obviously we're going to talk about Picard season 3, episode 4, the no-win scenario. We're going to talk about some recapping and, the things that happened, kind of break it down. Then we're going to go ahead and have our Beam Me Up section, which we're going to reveal to you guys the companion watches, the episodes of Next Gen or other Star Trek shows you may want to watch to kind of, not so much that you have to watch to see this episode and enjoy it, but it really will enhance your enjoyment. And then we're going to talk a little bit about Discovery Season 5 and then maybe some crazy theories. We've got a whole awesome show for you. So before we do that, I want to remind you guys as well, if you're listening to this or watching us live, hey, if you go to Apple iTunes, give us a 5-star review. We'll talk about it at the end. But why don't we go ahead and let's go ahead and energize.
Engage. No, don't engage. Energize. That's what we say in this room.
All right, energize. Picard episode 4 of season 3, the no-win scenario. Wow.
Right. Yes.
A lot of the issues I've had the last 3 episodes were taken care of in this one. First of all,
one big one was not.
Right. Well, we'll talk. Which one was that?
The reappearance of yet another main cast member.
We're on Geordi watch at this point. I was going to make a sound effect and stuff. We need a Geordi watch because at this point it's like, where the hell is LaForge? Like, I'm beginning to think I'm wearing a visor and that I can't see him. It's like he should be there by now. But outside of that, JP, did you happen to notice that I was right about something?
What were you right about?
Well, I seem to remember in episode 1 we talked about Jack Crusher and his name and how it came from. Yeah. And you said you thought it was pretty, insensitive of her. And what did Picard say? What did he say?
Yeah, no, you were right.
He's like, I think I would have named you that myself.
Yes. Take your laurels while you can, because you also said that Geordi would be in this episode.
I thought Geordi was going to be,
and that he was going to be the Deus Ex Machina for getting out.
And who knew it was going to be something going out as far back as season 1. But I mean, here's the thing. I mean, bird's eye view of this episode before we start breaking it down. This is exactly what they needed. This is the episode they needed. They needed this to. It's almost felt like they were purging some of the things from last season. It felt like they were kind of turning a corner and they were bringing us back to this next gen cast, which a lot of us, I think, have felt, a lot of older fans have felt was missing, even though the actors were there. What about you? I absolutely loved this. I loved that they didn't have a B plot. I love they stayed on the Titan the entire time. We never saw Raffi. We never saw Worf. It was 100%. It was a next-gen episode. We're in a trap. We were out exploring, even though they weren't exploring. And I think they mentioned, like, does anybody, get back to exploring? But they were in a trap of some sort and had to get out of it. It felt like a next-gen episode.
Yes, it did.
So bird's eye view from you. What did you think?
I mean, it wasn't until the end credits were rolling that where was Worf and Raffi? The story just kept me right there.
I thought for sure they would probably cut to them at the end. I was glad they didn't. I really was. They didn't need it. It honestly, it felt like a bottle show. Like
it was a bottle show.
It was a bottle show. Like they were like, yep, we're saving money on sets. We're saving money on this. We're just going to have like they never left the ship. I mean, you had a changeling, but yeah, there's just so much to unpack here. So let's kind of get into the minutia of it, because and again, I'm going to call out the stuff I really, really loved. Like, I love the fact that this episode, as much as last week's episode kind of opened positive a bit with like seeing Picard and Riker, there, and having a beer and stuff like that, and there was kind of funness there. This felt a lot more light. This felt a lot more, the opening of Picard in the 10 Forward lounge, trying to eat his lunch, and these damn kids come up. And they're like, "Hi, Admiral, we want to ask you a ton of questions." And he tries to be generous and get out of it. And one of the things he says, which I found fantastic, and I kind of giggled, he's like, "I don't like to tell stories." I'm like, "What?
What? Since when?
Yeah.
Since his lunch was getting cold, I guess.
Yeah. I really, and I like the little nuances in there, the asking about the Hirogen. Again, anytime you bring up Voyager, I'm in.
Now, here's something that bears noting. This scene takes place, they say, 5 years ago,
right?
And Picard calls out that Worf is still lieutenant commander at that time.
Correct. Well, no, he's calling out this took place 5 years ago. They are referencing an adventure probably 20 years ago. You know, all right, so it's 5 years ago. It's been 25 years since Nemesis. It could have been any time in that point. So, and I didn't go and look if there was a novel or anything, because we never saw Picard meet the Hirogen. Right. But I love the idea that Picard was fighting the Hirogen with Worf, because I always wanted to see Worf in the Hirogen. I mean, Klingons and Hirogen, period, just that has an awesome sound to it.
And then the call out, did you ask
Admiral
Janeway for any help?
Yes. And yeah, and that was fantastic. And then it goes to Picard doing the thing he always does. He's like, you have to have faith in your crew, remain steadfast, so that no matter how dire the situation is, there's still hope. And here we are in what's called the no-win scenario. And it cuts back to the Titan and what's going on. They're catching us up, and basically they're trying to play the power game now. They're like, okay, well, we need shields to stay alive because there's a lot of debris here, but we need life support to stay alive. And if we ever want to restart the engines, then we probably should throw something at the warp core. It's like, it was really fascinating to watch that. And then to see the nebula cause them another bioelectrical wave where everything lit up. Yep. By the way, I called that. We'll talk about it later. But the minute I saw that first time the lights went up, I was like, okay, I know how they're getting out of this.
Yep.
And
then they make the comment that the shields are going to fail the next hit, the next time the wave hits them. So Riker says, well, the hell with it.
Yeah.
Let's just shut the shields down. They're just draining the systems anyway.
Yeah, exactly. So, but then what really happened, and this is what I'm talking about, and I'm glad I did it so early, is that the scene where it cuts to Picard is standing in his quarters, and Riker comes in, and we have a conversation with Picard and Riker, and Picard immediately tries to apologize. And you see Will shut it down, and you wonder if Will's going to be like, there's no need, I was wrong, blah, blah, blah. And he doesn't do that at all. Instead, we find out something that makes what happened last week okay in my book. In that Riker starts telling the story about his son's death.
Yep.
And that he's like, I've gone to the edge of space with you. All right, I've seen the darkness and everything else. He's like, but nothing looked as dark as looking down into the grave where my son was being lowered. And he's like, and at that point, I stopped feeling anything. And I'm married to a woman who feels everything. He's like, so.
Who not only feels her emotions, but everyone else's.
Yeah. He's like, so I had to leave, and I came out here with you because I didn't want to see the blackness of death, and here we are, and and then he sits there and he goes to his friend and he goes, so I'm going to give you a piece of advice. He's like, and he tells him, he's like, that this is it. I think he says, this is the end, old friend. And he's like, and if I were you, I would go find and spend the last few hours I have with my son. He's like, and
now
go on.
Here's a question that I have.
Okay.
Picard is now android, golem, whatever.
Sure.
How is he going to die of oxygen deprivation when they lose life support?
You didn't watch much of episode of the last season. They said to him, you breathe. You're going to age. You will live a lifespan only to your, you can't live forever.
Yeah, I heard the other stuff. I
Yeah.
didn't hear anything about you're gonna have to breathe.
Right. But it's not just that. I mean, even still, he's going to sit there, and that might have went through his head too. Is like, I'm going to have to watch my son die. He probably would have lasted longer. So I love the fact that, but that, to me, that whole speech from Frakes, which, by the way, fantastic acting, fantastic everything. He sold every piece of that in a way that he didn't sell last week. Last week it didn't work. And again, I still call out the fact that there is no way a professional Starfleet officer like William T. Riker would have called the Admiral out in front of subordinates. He would have pulled him into the ready room, pulled him into the conference room, chewed him out, and said, "Get off my bridge." He never would have done that in front of the crew. I don't care how bad it is.
Right.
So, I mean, that's just it. I get it. Metalis wanted to write that. Okay, fine. Sure. But the fact is, too, what always struck me funny, I was like, how does Riker get here? Like, this doesn't seem like Will Riker. Will Riker was a risk taker. Will Riker was, he talked about playing it safe and best of both worlds. He's like, I used to go and take risks. I liked that about me. What happened? Deanna called him seasoned.
Right.
This is not a seasoned Will Riker. This is a broken Will Riker.
Absolutely.
And if you look at season 1 now, and I may go back and watch some of that because I think Frakes was sprinkling that in anyway. He was trying his best to kind of put on the front, but he was a broken man. And so they have now bought last week for me. All right, I'm like, okay, you paid for it. Good. You've established what's going on. Fantastic. I'm on board. What did you think? Like of Riker and all that and the change?
Yeah, no, I was absolutely on board with it. Riker having survivor's remorse and then becoming an emotionless hole.
Yeah.
And now they're stuck in a hole.
And I think it was the next scene where, you see, Picard is going to take his advice. And you see Riker sit down in the conference room and start trying to compose a message to Deanna.
Yes.
And there was one problem I had.
Oh, wait, no, that was later.
Oh, was it later? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I have that written down here.
Okay, good. Well, I mean, we'll talk about that in a minute. But so Picard goes to sickbay and basically asks Beverly, "Hey, can I spend some time with the kid?" And Beverly, of course, is like, "Absolutely." But at that point, Beverly is also like starting to notice the energy things, and her doctor gear kicks in.
Yeah.
And she's counting things down. In fact,
Go ahead.
Yeah, like I think the scene before that was they were dealing with Seven. Seven was talking to Riker about the what do you call it? About the changeling. And
yes.
It shows
Beverly's countdown starts at 7.
7.
They did that several times throughout the episode.
And it was on purpose. Okay.
Oh, absolutely. But that was a nice little detail.
One time good. 3 times,
Well,
there's only so many times I could hear Dave Letterman say "But if you go" before I'm just like, okay, it's no longer funny.
Well,
it took a long time. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. It took a while because the way he dropped "But if you go," I was like, that's still. I mean, I'm kind of giggling now, but in any event, yeah. So Picard goes and grabs Jack, takes him to the holodeck, and I love this little bit. Where they, Jack's there, he's like, there's no power. Look, how the hell is this working? Which is something we would have asked.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, they've built holodecks on basically a separate power grid.
Yeah.
And it's designed to basically be the oxygen that's the only way I could think about it. It's the oxygen mass that falls out when you lose cabin pressure in the plane. Yep. It's not going to save you, but you won't mind so much that you're dying.
Yeah. Now, before we go any further, we've got to back up because before they go into the holodeck,
right?
7, we see her going around the ship with a phaser, and
Yeah.
she goes into the transporter chief's room, finds his dead body, and reports it to Riker,
Right.
who then orders her to keep it quiet.
Right. And again, very on Will Riker. It again, but again, they had bought it at that point. But the way he was talking to her, he didn't sound like Riker at that point. Thank God he did later. But at that point, that is not a Will Riker move. This is again the guy who, when they were in Nagilum and where Silence has lease, he was the one who's like, yeah, we got to blow up the ship. How long? 20 minutes. Nice round number. It's not like they were like 20 minutes. We're going to blow the ship up. Let's not tell anybody. He just, it doesn't wash, especially after the fact that these are people that survived the Dominion War.
Right.
And we'll talk about, that's my nitpicky thing of this episode.
Okay. All right.
But go on.
And then after Picard and Jack go away from Beverly, we go back to Shaw's quarters, and we see him there sharpening a knife.
Yes.
And
she's trying. She beeps
Seven
to go
comes in. Yep. He's like, "Don't come." Beep beep beep. Don't come. Beep beep beep. Okay, what? Yeah. So she goes Seven comes in, lets him in on the situation, and actually swallows her pride and asks for his help.
Right, because she doesn't know the crew as well, she says.
Right.
And this is where we get a little bit of an info dump for those of you that haven't watched DS9 of what the changelings are. The fact I didn't like that he called it a pot. I think they did that strictly for the marijuana joke.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, that's you guys writing backwards, because Odo never called it a pot. It was always a bucket. It was like, I need to find my bucket. I need to find my pail. It was never a pot.
Now, here's my question.
Yeah.
Was that sure as heck looked like a darn near exact replica of Odo's bucket?
Different color, but yes. Well, because do
they all have their own?
Yes.
They go down to pots are us, or I'm sorry, buckets are us, and there's only one style to choose from.
Oh no, that's how they do it. The changelings, it's part of their ritual. If you remember in DS9, Odo was very he didn't let anybody see him turn into liquid. He was very, very. It was a very, very intimate thing for them to have that. So that made sense to me.
One person he did.
Yeah, Kira.
No,
and Loxana.
Loxana, yeah.
But he, and he had that bucket. And obviously, I love the fact that on the pad that when, Shaw shows her the pad of what the bucket's going to look like, at the bottom of it, and that's just it. It was different colors because Odo's was a different color, because at the bottom of that pad was a picture of Odo. And I was like, oh, man, I miss Rene Auberjonois. Because I think if he was still alive, he'd be in this. That would have been a big reveal, probably in episode 7 or 8, where you have Odo show up out of nowhere going, what can I do for you? It's
now, speaking of that, I really hope that we get a cameo by Salome Jens, who was the founder leader.
No, you know what? I don't want that. You know who I want? Give me Jeffrey Combs. Give me Wayun. He's been in every Star Trek. I'm sorry. Give me him. They can both be together, but if you can only have one. And I don't think they want to do that. If they're going to do that, they'll do it at the very end, and it's her coming to take care of the rebels, because that's what they are. These changelings are rebels.
Okay. Theory time. Is she what they broke out of, with the portal weapon being the cover?
Possibly. I doubt it, though. She was captured, right? She was captured as a prisoner of war. I believe. I don't think they let her go and be part of the Great Link. I'm not sure on that one either. I'd have to rewatch.
I would have to go back and rewatch the DS9 stuff.
And it was so hard that last season, especially those last few episodes where Gul Dukat just went sideways. It was He would talk about ruining a really great villain. They had a great villain in Dukat. He was sinister as hell. He was kind of smart, but he was also kind of crazy, and he had depth. And you turn him into this psycho goddish sort of weird thing, and it just But in any event, back to this. So they send Seven. He's like, go find his pail. Two things will happen. If you take his pail, he's going to have to find you because they need their pail to regenerate. He's like, and there is almost, what did he say? Residue. There's always some residue. Yep. He's like, and you tell the system sensor, you tell the ship's sensors to find that. So that's fantastic. I thought that was great. And, it was quick. And obviously this guy didn't hide it very well. I was like, even I saw it with the lights. And I got to admit, at one point I was like, I wonder if there's like a flower somewhere that he's just going to have, but she finds the bucket, goes out, and sure enough, she's trying to get an ensign to basically open up the biolab so that they can open up the ship's sensors and look for this thing. And they're like, we have no power. She's like, well, damn it, turn it on. So, and then sure enough, the changeling finds her. He grabs it. He destroys the bucket, right? Yeah, he destroyed it so she couldn't get the residue.
Yes.
And then runs
he
away.
kills an ensign.
Yeah, he killed the ensign first, and then he runs away. She basically, calls out to the medical, and they're going to figure stuff out. But then, meanwhile, while this is going on, you've got Picard and Jack Crusher sitting in 10 forward, having a great conversation with each other, feeling each other out. And the two I'll say this, Stewart, all right, I know this guy, I hate to say it, I know this guy from Downton Abbey. All right, I saw him on Downton Abbey. He's not horrible, but he was always kind of two-dimensional. He's doing better here. And I'm not sure if he just became a better actor, or far more likely, in my opinion, is that Patrick Stewart just rose him up a bit. There was nuance and layer upon layer. Jack Crusher, he was, if you watch it and go back and rewatch it, he is broadcasting everything that's the big twist at the end. He is broadcasting that in what he's not saying and what he's saying. Yep. And
Picard wants to know why Jack never came to him once he found out about him.
Well, what's great is that Jack jokes with him at first, and he breaks the ice. He's like, all right, we need to talk about the elephant.
Talk about the elephant in the room. Yep.
And then you're thinking like the father-son thing, and Picard's like, please, let's. And he's like, the hair.
Yeah.
He's like, how long have I got? He said, no, he's like, how long have I got? Yeah. And he's like, how old are you?
Picard's 23, 24? Yeah, enjoy it while you got.
Yeah, enjoy it while you can. Yeah. Which was fantastic. And they have some decent conversation, but again, there's a lot of verbal sparring between the two. Like, Picard will say something, and and Picard's trying to be as open as he can, and the character of Picard has never been an emotionally available person. So this is new to him. And you've got Jack, and that's just it. Like, this actor, he was playing the nuance of, does he know? I'm trying to tell, and he's giving him hints. Like, he leads him to this, Jack Crusher story. They talk about the fact that his name is Jack Crusher. And, Picard says, he's like, well, it's kind of funny. Jack Crusher was one of my best friends in the academy, and had I known about you, I probably would have named you Jack Crusher. And then it starts getting into a little bit more depth and a little bit more, Picard asks, what was your childhood like? What was this? And Jack says to him, he's like, look, if you're doing this because you think I need this, he's like, I don't. I had my mother. I'm okay. And here's where you see Picard do something you don't expect. He goes, I think I do.
Right.
And so Jack starts sharing some of himself. I grew up pretty much a loner, and I don't need people and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden you have a bunch of crew members coming in because, again, they had already kind of established that the holodeck is kind of where you go if it really looks like it's
the
over.
last haven.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, and they're like, is this private? And of course Picard opens it up.
Right.
Did you happen to notice though how the crew members looked? it was not an accident. Like, it's very racially diverse, but it was very
Yeah.
similar to the cadets from earlier.
Yes,
Like,
it
there was an Asian, there was an African American. I think we were meant to. They wanted to echo that, obviously.
Yes.
Again, I understand why they did it. It's a little ham-fisted as far as writing-wise. I mean, you know, the only thing they didn't do was like, wow, you recreated this? Remember that day we were all in the bar together? But, so they come in.
At least they did
Yeah.
hire different actors.
Yes. So they come in, and that's where, you know, Jack is kind of like, he's looking around the room and he sees people comforting each other. There's some people hugging. There's some people crying. You know, it's obvious that they realize this is starting. It's coming into them that this is going to be it. And he again said, you know, that's when he says, I don't need this. And Picard's like, I think I do. And they have a bit of a discussion. Jack encourages him to tell the story of how Picard had a no-win scenario once. And he goes into this tale of when they were on the Stargazer together. But I always thought he was commander of that. But then I remembered he actually took over, like when somebody died. So they were on the Stargazer together, and they had shore leave, and Jack and him basically find these two floozies, these two women, and they decide they want to go back because they weren't invited for, you know, relations. And so, yeah.
But hang on, before we go too much further here,
Sure.
we've got to back up again, because we see a shot of Vatic in her ship.
Yeah, we can talk about that, but let's kind of cut over, like, because it's going to lead there. So
okay,
because I'm trying to kind of keep us. It's not going to be necessarily an episode order, but it's going to be kind of, you know, let's have this discussion to lead into that, because we don't really get to that until they come up with the idea anyway. So Picard and him are having this discussion about Jack Crusher. They stole a shuttle from the Stargazer. They go to this planet, and he's like, and on the way back, we've run into a meteor storm, and all the systems go down. We have no navigation whatsoever. He's like, we can't call for help. And Jack goes, because you disabled the comms so that nobody can find you. He's like, yeah, exactly. And he tells the story of how him and Jack came up with this idea to, you know, to basically Humpty Dumpty the power and put some on life support for a minute, then some on to thrusters and some on, you know, and he's like, and we humptied and limped all the way back to the ship. And he's telling that story, and sure enough, at the end of the bar, who's there? And it's like, oh, what a family moment. Captain Shaw.
Yes.
And here's the thing. Shaw's grown on me. Actually, I'm like, okay, I kind of want to see you know, Star Trek Titan.
Now,
yeah,
they've talked about, they had Stashwick as the guest in the Ready Room.
Yeah, I haven't seen Ready Room
this
yet.
episode. So Shaw, they talk about Shaw is basically Captain Quint.
Yeah.
Except they didn't want to use the name Quint because it was too.
That would have been a little bit too.
So they used Shaw after Robert Shaw.
Yeah.
Yeah, the author.
Right. And he is, you know, first of all, let me just say this. I love Todd Stashwick. I've seen him in a few things. He is 100% a that guy actor. You don't know where you've seen him, but you know you've seen him. Like, for me, I knew when he started talking, I'm like, oh, man, and this is going to go real obscure. I'm like, that's a reporter from Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip who was in her, you know, he's always played this kind of smarmy, intelligent, but kind of a nozzle, douchey kind of cat. It's kind of the guy who's always been played. So, you know, but he's there. And then we find out why he's such a nozzle. So, you know, he's like, this family moment, what a great story. He's like, and then he pivots, and right away, Patrick Stewart, the minute this guy pivots to this story, and the minute he mentions the star date, this is why you pay Patrick Stewart money. Crap. He changes. You look at it again. He changes how he's sitting. He knows. He's had this conversation so many times.
Now, something else. Shaw sits at the bar, kind of basically flipping everyone off.
Yeah. I was gonna let that kind of go. And again, Picard dropped an F-bomb. I didn't like it, but that's just me. So, but he's sitting there and he's like, I'm surprised your dad didn't tell you about the first time we met. And even Picard's kind of looking so. He's like, Stardate 446 44005 or whatever. He's like, and immediately I knew the minute he said it like that, I'm like, oh, this guy was at Wolf 359.
Yep.
And he's like, and he was like, I was on the Starship, blah, blah. And I was
Constance.
the Starship Constance. And again, Picard recognizes the name because Picard would be the kind of guy who would go back and be like, what ships did I destroy? The only way it could have been
contacting next of kin and stuff.
The only way it could have been better is if the guy, I kind of almost wish he had said, because then he would have been under Captain Riker, the Melbourne. I was like, oh, tell me he was on the Melbourne. Not only that, but this guy would have served underneath Riker.
It makes more sense for the story for him not to have been.
Right.
Because the Melbourne survived.
No, it didn't. They were at Wolf 359. They're going, she's like, the Tolstoy, the Akyushu. And then there's a step. She goes, the Melbourne. Like she's reading the registry of the ships that were destroyed. So he could have been on the Melbourne. I was like, okay that was but again, Metalis is not us. Realize that, guys. He watches a few episodes, but he's not us. So I'm gonna let it go. But headcanon wise, I'm like, I would have rather had him on the Melbourne. Because again, he doesn't like Riker either. And it just would have been in any event. He mentions that he was on the ship. He's like, and there's 50 of us left. We get down to the life deck. He's like, and there's one pod left, 10 seats. We're all friends. We all care about each other. Nobody wants to, tell somebody they can't go. We start, just kind of talking and figuring it out. He's like,
we were waiting for orders.
Yeah, we're waiting for orders, and a lieutenant comes down and immediately just goes, you, and then he's like, and you, and points at me. And I thought it was a mistake. And he made a point to mention, and she doesn't include herself.
Yep.
And basically he sits there and goes through the story of how he's dealing with survivor remorse because he's like, I argue with her. I think she made a mistake. She looks at me and goes, and it's kind of the way he does it again, Stashwick. He's like, she looks at me and goes, get on that ship. Get on that pod. It's an order. And then
he's like, why some grunt grease monkey from Chicago?
Yeah, a shithead from Chicago, grease monkey. Yeah, and again, it sets everything of why this guy is such a nozzle to Picard and Riker, because and again, it has to be just them because he rose to the rank of a captain. How do you do that if you're this much of a dick? Right. The answer is you're probably not. So he tells that, and Stewart is he's stricken. He knows not to apologize. It's again, if you look, Stewart is playing this like, I've had this conversation so many times. He's like, and he knows that the only thing he can do is leave. And he basically excuses himself. And because it goes on and he says, and guess where your father was during that battle? He's like, he was on the Borg cube leading the attack. 11,000 souls lost. He's like, and do you know what they call him? Locutus of Borg. He's so good at murdering humans. They gave him a
bleeping name.
Yes. And again, and Picard knows, he's like, this is a righteous anger. I cannot do anything about this. Chooses to leave. And Jack, this is where Jack's winning me over because he follows his dad.
Yeah.
And he tries to reach out to him. And then you realize Beverly never told him this. She never said anything about, him being a Borg.
Right.
And which, again, it's mentioned in other places and it goes on, it's obvious she's told him a lot of the stories, but this is the one, and I think that's why he was the way he was. He's like, this is the one my mother kept from me. So I thought it was fantastic. Again, he totally won me over, that actor, and and then during that it kind of does, and to get what you were saying, it does cut away to the other side of the nebula. We see the Shrike. Vadic is on it, and all of a sudden she basically feels it that she's supposed to report in. And this was kind of interesting because
the reporting, how she gets to report in.
Well, it's twofold. First of all, a lot of people are saying that, okay, Vadic's a changeling. I don't think Vadic's a changeling. I think Vadic is wearing a changeling. Because what happens is she goes and she cuts off her arm. Whoa, yes. Wait a second.
No.
Stashwick's is changeling.
No.
Stashwick's the boss.
No.
Shaw's the boss. No?
No.
Why was Shaw sharpening his knife?
I don't know. Maybe he was getting ready to have another steak.
I'm gonna lay this out.
Ultra rare? No.
I'm gonna lay this out.
No.
I think he is. I think he is.
But I'm saying Vadic is a collective of changelings.
I don't think so, because she can make, the ears are one thing, and I said it last week. She kind of has Odo hair, and the ears. I started out last week, but here's the thing. He says to her, she's like, because she cuts her arm off and it becomes like a floating head that talks to her, a changeling.
No, not a head, just a face.
Yeah, just a face.
Because when it goes around, you can see it from like inside.
So it becomes this thing, and it starts talking at her, and it says, you need to go back and get that ship, because she's reporting in saying, listen, the Titan is falling into the gravity well. We can't get Jack Crusher. It's too far gone. We'll be destroyed. We can't do it. And the head basically says, pursue. And she's like, I can't pursue. Like, we have a gravitic weapon. We're talking about a singularity. This doesn't end well. And he says, pursue. And she's like, it's suicide. He's like, your entire crew. He's like, your crew. And then she says, your people are expendable, basically. So
your ship is expendable. Your crew is expendable. You are expendable.
And she says it says you people, your people. And it sounds, I don't think she's a changeling. I think she's something else. Maybe she's a Vorta who had surgery. I don't know what. But I'm going on record right now, just as I did with Jack Crusher, she's not a changeling. There's something coming there.
Okay. Yes, there is something else coming.
And I think, here's the thing. This is why I think Shaw, what if Shaw had to cut his arm off to talk to Vadic? Because I think it happened somewhere around there. I'm just saying, they spent a lot of time showing him sharpening a knife.
No,
so
I'm not buying into that one yet.
All right. So basically, she basically jettisons which is good. They have to jettison that weapon. That weapon is so powerful that you cannot keep the orange portal gun. They win.
No.
So she has to jettison it.
Yep. Now she starts chewing up scenery, going goodbye. Yeah. Is she saying it to the weapon? Is she saying it to her crew? Is she saying it to the universe?
To the crew, the universe. I don't know. But she's she's going a little, nuts there. And so basically, we skipped like the second flashback where he's talking to the kids. He's telling the same story to the students.
About the Temerians.
Yes. He does mention, which I thought was great, when the walls fell. So basically, after Picard leaves 10 forward, Jack Crusher starts trying to convince him. He's like, wait, I forget how they end up in sickbay. I think he's just going back to sickbay. And
no. Jack and Jean-Luc are walking down the hallway, and Beverly finds them.
That's right, she does. And she starts to tell them
about riding the
Yes.
energy wave
Well,
out of the gravity well.
She starts to mention that they're in a womb. And these are contractions, and they are getting slightly faster. She's like, once it started happening, I think she almost said by reflex, counting, and timing these. And she's like, because it felt like a contraction. She's like, we're not going to want to be here when the birth happens. Or she said something like, well, when it happens, it'll be quick.
It'll be quick for us.
Yeah. And then, Jack gets the idea because Jack had noticed every time those energy waves hit, as I did and anybody else in the world did, that every time the energy waves went through, the lights would get brighter.
Back. Yep.
Yeah. So he's like, wait a second, this thing has energy. We can probably, if we can find some way to harness that, then we will, blah, 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 and technobabble. And then...
And so then they go to Riker with this idea.
And this is, again, the best scene in the episode. This is when this episode turns into the Next Generation.
Yep. And Riker turns them down.
At first.
Yeah. Yes. He says, no, we're not doing this. This is not worth the last few minutes of our lives.
Right.
And Beverly invokes Deanna Troy's name.
Mm-hmm. She says, Deanna would disagree. Like there needs to be hope or something to that effect.
Trust.
Yeah, there needs to be
trust was the word.
Yeah, and
that we're all here in this place for a reason.
Right. So,
Will relents and starts adding into the plan.
Well, that's just it. All of a sudden, well, it's not just that. She's like, it's trust in the people. She's like, and she invokes their history. She's like, and she doesn't really include Jack, but she's like, we have been here before. We have been in these type of situations before. We've gotten out of it. We can do it again. Trust in us. We can make this happen. And even I'm like sitting there going, hells yeah. Like this is... It felt like Next Gen again. All of a sudden, Will Riker, he sees the plan and then he comes up with a better way to do it. And he's like, "Well, wait. If we open the nacelle covers, he's like, then we can actually inject this energy directly into the warp core and warp out of here." Right. Because he starts coming up with this plan. They all get together, and it does. It's them sitting in the conference room, coming up with a plan. It's
playing
the next,
off each other.
It's the Next Gen playbook. All of a sudden, they've come up with this outrageous plan involving a huge ton of technobabble that makes absolutely no scientific sense. And it's, now it's going to work, that this is how they're going to get out of it. And so what happens is that basically the two of them go back to the bridge. They come up with this idea. And they realize that they're 2 hands short. They need one more pair of hands. And so Picard and Seven go and get Shaw. And Picard apologizes to Shaw in some way. Actually, he doesn't apologize for what happened, but he earns his respect when he's like, what we need here is a piece
the grease
of shit.
Monkey.
He's
piece
like,
of shit grease monkey from Chicago.
Yeah, it's like piece of shit grease monkey from Chicago. And that's when Shaw goes, okay, yeah, I'm in.
And then he says, give me 5 minutes.
Yeah, let me get changed.
Then we have Beverly counting down from 5.
Exactly. It was one of those really great moments. So he's going to go and open the nacelles because she's like, we can't spare any of the engineering crew and nobody else on this crew. He's like, nacelle technology hasn't really aged in 25 years, so which is probably true.
But they say the reason they need him specifically is none of the other engineers know how to
Well, she said they couldn't spare an engineer and nobody else knew how to do this. I think she knows an engineer would know how to do that. She's like, but the engineers are fixing the warp core. Like, she's like, they need everybody in the engineering. And so he's going to go down into nacelle control. And then I love this. He's like, they're getting down to nacelle control and Shaw's the one. He kind of looks at Seven and he goes,
he invokes Murphy's Law.
He's like, if I were a changeling and I wanted to stop what was about to happen, I'm pretty sure I'd come here.
Right about now.
Right about now, I'd be heading my way here. And so they come up with an idea. They don't.
And seven calls Riker,
and we don't know what.
Yeah. We don't know what it is because she taps on her comm badge, says it contacts Riker, and the very next phrase we hear is we see Riker coming out saying confirmed
7,
like ending the call.
Yep. And so he comes back to the bridge from the conference room, and I gotta admit, this was it for me. I almost kind of applauded. He's like, Admiral, and he points to the center chair. Picard sits in the center seat. Riker takes his place to his right, and he's like, Jack, I need you here. And he puts Jack in the other seat, and they're gonna do basically, they have to navigate asteroids and ride this wave. And basically what happens is Picard's like, Riker's like, you've done this before.
Yes.
And so you've got Jack calling out stuff, calling out the asteroids. LaForge is actually still doing the piloting, but Picard is giving the instructions. And again, this is the scene you see in the trailer. It's what you want to see. He's like, Ensign LaForge, engage. And I'm like,
yep. There it is.
You hear it, and you're just like, fuck yeah. And fantastic. And it's just, it was really good. So obviously they do that. They cut away for a little bit from that, and then they go back down to the nacelle room, and all of a sudden, Ensign LaForge is there.
Shows up. Yep.
In a minute. And now I immediately am like, okay, that's the changeling.
Yeah, I knew too.
Yeah. I don't think anybody didn't know. 7 had stepped away for a minute. He needed a tool or something. She comes in.
Needed her to check on something.
Yeah. She's talking to Shaw, and 7 comes out, and she's talking to Shaw and asking questions. She's like, my father is Geordi LaForge, an incredible engineer. You totally need my help. And Shaw knows what's up. And all of a sudden you see a phaser come out of the right side of the screen or left side of the screen, and it's 7, and she's got it pointed right at her head. And 7 basically is, she's like, what are you doing here? She's like, I came to help you, Commander. And she's like, Commander who?
Commander what?
Yeah, Commander who? She's like, well, Commander Sorensen. And just shoots her right in the head. And sure enough, it is the changeling. Mm-hmm. Shaw looks at her and goes, how did you know?
And she says, LaForge calls me Commander 7 because
out of respect. And Shaw just kind of goes, okay.
Good job.
Yeah, good job. Gets back to work. They get obviously you knew this. The techno babble is obviously going to work. They get the thing. The wave comes. They have the nacelles open, so they're charging the warp core. They're like, we're going to need 90 seconds to get warp drive back online. So they're going to have to ride this wave for the next 90 seconds. Now, I'm sitting here going, okay, but what about the asteroids? Because how the hell do you navigate waves? And then I thought about it. I'm like, odds are good the wave is probably pushing asteroids out of the way. Maybe there's a wake of the wave. So I'm going to let that go because, again, it sounded a little nitpicky. And they're riding it. They're about 10 seconds away from the end, and sure enough, there's the damn Shrike.
Yeah, of course.
They're like, enemy contact, Shrike, dead ahead. And this is where Riker.
Oh, yes, this was fun.
Oh, it was fantastic. So Riker goes, they just passed a really large asteroid, and he's like, Ensign LaForge, tractor beam at these coordinates. And you see the rear tractor beam lock onto an asteroid. And then they're dragging it, and then he's like, aft thrusters, or upper thrusters now. They dip the saucer, and the rock just basically flies over the ship and hits the Shrike dead on. It doesn't kill it.
They slingshotted it.
Yeah, doesn't kill it. Obviously, you can't kill it. She's needed. But it definitely disables it. They're not going to be able to pursue. Picard is like, did you just throw a rock at the ship?
Damn right I did.
And Picard just smiles and nods. And they're through, and they start to get through, and all of a sudden they're surrounded in space by space babies. Now, these don't look like the encounter at Farpoint creatures, but they have a lot of similarities. There's tentacles. Yeah.
Tentacles, coloration.
I'm going to sit here and say this. I think they wanted these to be that. I don't think they wanted to do what they did in Farpoint because they didn't have to with this. They have a little bit more money. In my head canon, it's the same damn creature because it would have made more sense had they mentioned, instead of the Farpoint encounter, because in the conference room they mentioned, because Beverly says, she's like, I think this is like a spacefaring race, and I think it's about to spawn hatchlings. And they're like, we've seen spacefaring creatures before. And Riker says, oh yeah, Farpoint. And I'm like, well, wouldn't you think Galaxy's Child instead? Like that was far more, you had to deal with that shit.
Yeah. Or Tin Man.
Yeah. Well, Tin Man was a ship.
Well, but it was also a living ship.
It was a living ship, but I mean, Galaxy's Child, like it nursed off the Enterprise.
Yeah.
I get it though. And that's why I'm like, I think they did Farpoint because they wanted to use these creatures. So I think in my head canon, it's the same creatures. And maybe that's why it worked. And now I'm going to sit here and go, head canon also, hey, maybe these creatures knew that it was Riker and Picard because they were somewhat telepathic and could communicate and stuff. And they were sending energy to kind of keep them alive. Like this was all a plan on there. Again, head canon. But any event,
I'm not quite ready to go there.
So any event,
they were gifting them the energy.
Yeah. So, I mean, it becomes this great thing. They're having a celebration. And then we get the last flashback. Before they talk to Deanna, they have one last flashback.
Yes.
Because they're celebrating and everything. And I think this is the way we're supposed to interpret it because Stewart did it. It's Picard remembering. I think he's remembering this. And basically what happens is it goes back to that bar with the trainees. He finishes the story about Jack Crusher, and he's going to go back to his fish. Yeah.
Which, by the way, should have been Stone Cold because it sure looked like they were
talking a while
about supper time.
Yeah,
based on the lighting change.
So in the basically you hear a voice with a British accent calling from behind them. They split up, and there's a young Jack Crusher wearing a hat down over his eyes a bit. And he basically, he
says, what about family?
Yeah, he's like, haven't you ever wanted a real family? And Picard says to him, he's like,
Starfleet has been the only family I have ever needed.
Yes. And you see Jack's eyes register that, but then you look at Picard and he realizes he was reaching out to me, and I said the complete wrong thing. And he realizes that he could have had a relationship with his son. He can't help it. There's nothing. It wasn't, but it's and it basically in that moment they humanized Jack Crusher. Okay, because before it's like he chose not to know you. He chose not to be a part of you. So you're like, what is he, just a dick? And you're like, no, he wanted to know you. He wanted to be a part of you. And it also kind of redeems Beverly a bit because you got to figure if he's reaching out and looking for his dad, then Beverly wasn't sitting there, bad-mouthing him or anything like that. She was telling good stories. And again, she didn't tell him about the Borg. Like, there's some layers there. Yeah. And it's Picard who actually drove the nail in the coffin of that relationship that could have been for 20 years or 5 years, and that was fantastic. And again, it's all Picard acting. And he looks at his son, and his son, I think, also realizes, he's like, oh, now you know. Okay. And again, I think Jack Crusher was trying to stir that memory in him. He was trying to, bring that out. But then, then we kind of get like, the end of the episode. Riker, you see Riker recording to Deanna. He's trying to finish the recording, or we're meant to think that. Sure enough, she's on the screen.
Yep. He calls and they have a reconciliation.
Yeah, he apologizes. He's like, I was out here. He's like, and he told her, he's like, I haven't felt anything. I haven't felt like I was worthy of you anymore. And so I was out here. He's like, and we saw a birth. He's like, and it was transforming, something to that effect. And he's like, yes, this is my fault. I did this. And then he goes, but I'm going to get it back. And it just, it has this like double-edged sword, because like almost it sounds kind of like, I hope I can believe it. There's that part of me that's like, I want to believe this, but then there's the other part that's like, how many addicts say that? I'm
Right.
going to get this back. I'm going to fix this. And so you're like, I want to believe that, though. This again is making me finally believe in Starfleet again.
Yeah.
Like, okay. And then, the last part of the episode, it's the red door thing again. It's, what is going on? And we hear Picard give a admiral's log, which we haven't heard since the end of Nemesis. So I loved it. This whole episode was fantastic. Yes, they should have had Geordi. I don't know how you work him in. But
I've got ideas.
Okay.
I've got ideas.
All right. So we'll talk about that. But that's kind of where we're at, is that, at this point, it's, I'm glad. I am glad it redeemed a lot of the problems I've had with Picard overall as a series, as well as this season. And Riker, his portrayal, Jack, and all that. I was all about this episode. What about you?
Yeah, it was very cathartic in a lot of ways. It felt like a course correction for our main cast.
It felt like a next gen episode. It really did. It felt like a next gen to me. And so on that note, though, let's take a minute. We're just gonna play a quick message for you guys. We'll come back and do Beam Me Up. But don't go away. We'll be back in about 35, 45, 60 seconds. Push 4 times on your thing.
When toxic culture has you down,
when you're just looking to laugh and have fun,
kick back and enjoy watching a video game,
or just make some new friends,
it's time to visit the Geek to Geek Media Network,
a community of podcasters, streamers, and bloggers.
Well, more of a family than a community.
All dedicated to geeking out about the things we love. Things like
video games,
Star Wars,
comics,
movies,
K-pop,
Disney Plus,
Keanu Reeves,
new,
or whatever our community decides is the next best thing.
That's right. We have a great online community on Slack and Discord where we chat about our weekly geekery with listeners and viewers.
And each other.
Yep, and each other in real time, and we can't wait for you to join us.
So come check us out at geektogeekmedia.com.
and escape toxic fandom for something much more...
Keanu?
Yes, Keanu.
Scotty, beam me up.
All right, the Beam Me Up section. So let's kind of go through this real quick. I pushed the few of the things for Beam Me Up down to next week. Let's talk a little bit about companion watches. We've got 4 episodes on this one. So, I mean, the first one I put in, it was name dropped. It was there. Encounter at Farpoint, the pilot of Star Trek Next Gen. They do a lot of calling back to that in this episode. Obviously, the creatures at the end are meant to invoke that. Some of what goes on in here, et cetera, et cetera. I could also say Best of Both Worlds because of, the Borg. What's one you put in?
I put in Kobayashi Maru, which is the Discovery season 4 premiere.
Okay.
Because they're dealing with the no-win scenario, which was actually first coined back in Star
Trek
Wrath
2.
of Khan.
Yep. Well, absolutely. Go on.
Go ahead.
No. The other one I'm going to pull is, and I thought about this, Tin Man or Galaxy's Child, but I really felt Galaxy's Child was more kind of what we were looking at here. Galaxy's Child was, I think, season 4. Basically, yeah, season 4 or 5. It was later because it was the second time we saw Leah Brahms. She shows up on the Enterprise, and they discover basically a mother in space, a life form who's able to just, fly through space. She's doing something, and they have to shoot her. They have to destroy her. They cut the baby out of her, and because she was pregnant, and the baby comes out of the mother, and immediately thinks the Enterprise is its mother, and it latches on to the back of the star drive section and the saucer, and over the shuttle bay, because that was one of the great scenes, was they tried to open the shuttle bay to get it to go off. You just see the flap going. But I mean, they talk about the fact that they see these so rarely, these space-faring life forms, and this is really kind of what I thought, this was going to be about, this would be about. And the other one was definitely, what the heck was the name of it? I told you about it earlier today. There's an episode where Picard had to fly manually through an asteroid field. Booby Trap.
Booby Trap, yeah.
Basically, Picard takes over and flies through an asteroid field, flies the Enterprise. He's like, he moves the helm officer away and sits down and takes it himself. And Data's calling out coordinates. Again, a nice callback.
Absolutely.
What was your other one?
And a similarly titled episode was we've only had the one season so far of Prodigy. Episode 6 is called Kobayashi. And if you've never watched Prodigy, give this one episode a chance. It's just after they do a 5 episodes, get to know the crew, get the crew on the ship. This is the captain, quote unquote, of the ship going into into the holodeck and having a Kobayashi Maru situation, but he gets to have Beverly Crusher on the ship. Okay. They take archival footage from Scotty, from Uhura, from Odo, from Spock, and incorporate those into this episode. It's really well done. I can't recommend it enough.
Yeah. I haven't watched a lot of Prodigy because, again, I'm just kind of, I don't know. For me, I just, again, it just doesn't feel like me. I watched a few episodes and it didn't grab me. It was a little juvenile, and that's kind of who it's for. So, but I'll check that episode out. So yeah, those are kind of the companion episodes you might want to check out. There's plenty more. Listen, Paramount Plus, you already got it anyway. You might as well watch Star Trek. The other big news that came out this week, the upcoming season 5 of Discovery, which they've pushed back now to 24 because they want to craft a series finale for it. That's what we're hearing. It was supposed to be out later this year. And they basically are like, this is going to be, 2024, that it's going to be the last season. I, for one, am okay with that. I think Discovery has overstayed its welcome. I don't think they knew what they wanted to do with it. And I'm not saying it was a failed experiment by any stretch. I think without Discovery, we don't get Strange New Worlds. And I'm sorry.
Yeah, and we don't get Picard.
Yeah. Well, I think we would have got Picard anyway. There was money to be made. We would have got Picard. But we don't get Strange New Worlds. And I'm going to lay this out there right now. Even with how good Picard is right now, you want good Trek, new Trek. You want good Star Trek that's actually Star Trek, because there's a better show out there that's not. Strange New Worlds is your jam. Trust me.
Absolutely.
They're exploring. Yes. They have it definitely has the balance. We'll talk about this, when we're not reviewing episodes. It runs the balance between having semi-serialized storytelling, but also exploring, going to worlds, dealing with, topics for today, but not in a way that hits you over the head with a frying pan. Like, it feels like Star Trek to me. It's one of the best. It is the best new Trek out there. Again, the Orville is actually the best Trek out there, period. But go on.
But yeah, I was gonna say, Strange New Worlds is kind of the best of both worlds. It has the Alien of the Week that we got used to with original series,
or Planet of the Week, yeah.
Planet of the Week with and with Next Generation also. But what happens in this week's episode, they remember it next week.
It
and
honestly feels
it
like
has repercussions.
It feels like if Ronald D. Moore had gotten to do a Starship show and had no rules. Because, that's what Ronald D. Moore wanted to do, and that's how DS9 was. It was Ronald D. Moore and, oh gosh, who's the other guy? Who's the other head? He was actually the head.
Echeverria?
No, Echeverria was just one of the writers.
Braga?
No, he had blue hair, and he was the showrunner, and he was like their Ira Stephen Bear. That's it. So Bear and Moore worked together to be like, they went to Berman constantly and said, look, we want to serialize storytelling. They got it with DS9 because he finally made the case to Berman, and he said, look, yes, Starship shows, you can do a Planet of the Week, no problem. They get to go, they have an adventure, they leave, and they leave everybody behind. There's really nothing to follow up on. He's like, here's the problem. You've got people coming to this station. They're going to interact with our people, and our people are not going to leave. He's like, and they're going to change the station. He's like, that's not going to work. So that's how they managed to do that. I think Strange New Worlds and DS9 are probably my two favorite, along with TNG. Definitely, I'm okay with Discovery leaving. Again, they just didn't know what they wanted to do with it. They wanted to make a prequel, and when it didn't work because they pissed everyone off, they were like, and I applaud them for calling it audible. They were like, let's go to the far future, and it's like, okay, so now you're the future Trek. Okay. And frankly, I just want a next gen show. Like, give me the next gen, which I think they're building towards, by the way.
Yes.
Jack Crusher, you've got LaForge's daughters,
You're stepping on my crazy theory time.
Oh, okay, sorry. So let's do that. You have a crazy theory, and that's kind of how we'll wrap up the show tonight. What is your crazy theory?
My crazy theory is that the 3 seasons of Picard have become the Next Generation's exact duplicate of all the original series movies. Because you've got, if you've watched any of the teaser trailers for Picard season 3,
right,
you know that there's going to be some sort of computer intelligence coming up. V'ger.
Oh, I haven't seen that. V'ger?
No. I'm relating it to V'ger.
Yeah.
Okay. You've got Captain has a son with an old foe. A main character dies. Okay. And you've got a Kobayashi Maru.
Sure.
Gee, sound like Wrath of Khan?
I don't think you're wrong, but I think what they're doing is I actually think it's much more involved than that. I think honestly this feels like a backdoor pilot. Like they're trying to see, hey, are you going to get invested in the LaForge kids? Are you going to get invested in? And here's what you do: you have Worf be the captain, because Michael Dorn will do this till the day he damn dies.
Yeah. And that refers to Star Trek Generations.
Yeah,
a handoff from one generation to the next.
Here's what I think. I think they're going to pull Alexander Rozhenko out of mothballs somewhere.
Oh God, no.
You know what? If he's casted well, if he's casted better than he was, listen, nothing against little Andrew from Family Ties. He was pretty okay as him. But the teenager they had in DS9, he couldn't. He was Anakin Skywalker with Klingon makeup. Yeah. So I get it. But, all right, so say they pull Rozhenko out of mothballs. You get whatever Soji or whatever the hell her name was. She's kind of Data's daughter. You've got Riker, you've got Picard and Crusher's kid, you've got LaForge's kids. Like,
where
they could do
Icheb?
Icheb's dead.
Icheb?
He's dead.
Oh, he died.
They killed him in season 1. Deader than dead. Problem I had with season 1. Icheb dead. Very dead. But bring B'Elanna and Tom's daughter.
Oh, yeah.
You could do that. Like they have options. give me a next gen. Don't call it that. And I think they I've read articles that said I'm not the only one coming up with this, and neither are you with this theory.
Right.
That this could actually be a thing. Now, Paramount is trying to curtail some spending, which is one of the reasons that Discovery's going off the air. I think they want to go down to probably 2 live action, maybe 2 cartoon shows. So, they get rid of Discovery. They get rid of Picard because he's aging out.
Right.
They could do a next gen.
But there's still the Section 31 show that's been in development.
I don't think it's coming. I don't think it's coming. I think Michelle Yeoh is getting a little long in the tooth. And I think, again, Paramount's had changes. Like, they want to be the Yellowstone network. So,
but she has the cachet now that she's
does.
got all these awards, and she wants to do it.
Yeah, she does, but she probably also wants to be paid to do it, and that's tricky. Like, here's the thing. Stewart's a producer on this, so, yeah, he probably gave himself a little salary, and he's getting a lot on the back end. The fact is, and here's the thing. I don't think a Section 31 show, I don't know that it
and
works.
they've also talked about a Starfleet Academy show.
That I'd rather have. I'd rather have an Academy show. I think that would be kind of cool. And here's the thing.
A rumor for a while was that the Starfleet Academy show would have Tilly from Discovery as one of the main characters.
I don't want that. You know what I want? Give me OG. Give me the original cast at the Academy. Give me Star Trek 2009, but expand it. Like, don't give me Chris Pine. I'm good with him. But, I mean, imagine, like, I'd love to see something like that where, they're at the Academy, stuff like that. I mean, unless they're going to do it in such a way that they honor Ike Eisenman.
I'm not on board with that one as much because I'm afraid it would go down like the Dawson's Creek road.
Yeah. I don't think Metalis is the right... Here's the thing. I don't think Kurtzman and Metalis are the right people to run Star Trek anymore. I still don't. I think Picard is going to be a major windfall. I think Strange New Worlds is going to do great. And so we're stuck with them for a while. But I still don't think they're the right guys for Trek. I don't think they understand what Trek is supposed to be. I read articles where Jonathan Frakes is talking about, and he's like, as an actor... Or no, I saw him on Inside of You with... Rosenbaum. He's like, as an actor, you want conflict. And the rules were in the old days, we couldn't have crew conflict. And we all, as an actor and stuff like that, we all fought against that. And I'm like, and they were right to hold their guns, because here's the thing. Discovery is never going to be classic. Discovery is always going to be one of those things you watch to be a completist. Everybody loves Next Gen. Some like the old series, the original series, but everybody loves Next Gen, Deep Space Nine. Some like Voyager, fewer like Enterprise. There's something to that, and that was a darker time in the late '80s, early '90s. We need some utopia right now. We need that.
Yes.
We need that escape. And by giving, he's like, as an actor, you want conflict because conflict brings drama. Well, you did pretty well when you had conflict. You just didn't have conflict between the crew. And again, it felt so anti-Star Trek last week.
But I think there's a line to be towed between conflict and disagreement.
Right. There was always disagreement. Right. But be that as it may, we're kind of running long. So I can't disagree with you on that. But next week we'll talk a little bit about some of the birthdays and stuff going on, and the comic and stuff. You know what? Here, starting in March, there's a new Star Trek comic, Defiant. Check it out. It's an IDW.
There you go.
There you go. We've talked about it. Here's the thing. Yeah, I am on board. This episode bought me. You can have one or two bad ones now. Please don't. But, you only have 10 episodes, but. And yeah, it's cool. But I mean, do you have any last thoughts or?
Well, next week we're going to catch up with Worf and Rafi quite a bit. It's going to be, I'd say, 2/3 to 3/4 of the episode.
And I think this is where they have to bring Geordi in.
Yes. The preview has said we're going to see Worf's handler.
Oh, Worf's handler?
Yes.
So I thought he was supposed to be...
But I don't think that's going to be Geordi, but I think Geordi is going to be in charge of the Daystrom Institute.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So they'll go to the Daystrom Institute, and that's how they get Geordi. Yes. So, all right. So on that note, why don't we go ahead and close our hailing frequencies?
Hailing frequencies closed, sir.
All right. So as we warp out of this sector, we want to remind you where you can find us online and all over the interwebs. First and foremost, you can download the show on most podcatchers right now. We are definitely on Google and Apple. You can also go to our website to catch our podcast. It's podcast.yourfatherstrekcast.com. Likewise, if you have an Apple iPhone or you use iTunes, please, I can't stress this enough, please consider going to our page in the podcast store and leaving a 5-star review. Write a review. We will read it on the show, by the way. If you leave us some 5-star reviews, in time, once we get a few, maybe we'll do some kind of giveaways if we can of some Star Trek stuff or what have you. We really need those. As a new show, this does so much to get us higher in the rankings. Don't get me wrong. If you look up the word Trekcast right now in podcast in Apple, we do come up on the first page. But I don't think I would think to look for Trekcast. I might look for Star Trek Cast. But please, guys, give us some reviews. Get the word out. Share us on Reddit, the whole 9. The link for the Apple iTunes page, even if you don't have an iPhone, go there and do it. The link for that is on our Anchor page.
You can also like our YouTube channel and subscribe at youtube.com/@yourfatherstrekcast and follow our Facebook at facebook.com/yourfatherstrekcast.
We want to remind you, we have a website. It's at www.yourfatherstrekcast.com. And of course, if you want some great gaming content for Marvel Snap, Minecraft, and other games that I enjoy, check out my Twitch and YouTube. I'm at Old Man Gamer NY. That's for New York, by the way. On Twitch or YouTube, I put some content up weekly. I did do some snapping, and I think JP's getting into Snap.
I might be diving down that hole. But if you'd like to write us, you can send an email to will@yourfatherstrekcast.com, or you can email me at jp@yourfatherstrekcast.com.
So that's going to do it for us this week. We will be back next time. Not sure what night next week we'll be recording, but we're gonna be here. JP, we're gonna be talking about the next episode of Picard as well as any other Star Trek news. Thank you so much for listening and hanging out with us tonight. Thanks for watching. Thank you for telling your friends about the show. So for JP, this is Old Man Gamer Will Benson saying thank you again for listening, and we want to remind you we'll see you next time out there. That away. And I stopped recording. Okay. That was an episode.